In this video, I just want to talk about how it actually is working for elections, working the whole day, and what that really looks like and what that really feels like. A lot of people don't really know this, but you actually have to go and set up the day before. It usually takes about an hour, and then you have to reach there approximately 2 hours before the start of the poll, so that's about 4 o'clock in the morning, and then you have to be there afterwards to count the amount of ballots and do all the paperwork and then set back up the room that we would have been using. Most of the times it's a classroom in a secondary school, and pack back the furniture as how we would have met it the day before. So usually what happens is that you would have about, let's say, somewhere between 300 to 500 people per polling station, and those are the amount of people, or the maximum amount of people, that would be able to vote at that polling station on election day. Now, most of the times not everybody just come out and vote, but sometimes they may get the majority depending on the area, and also depending whether it is a general election or a local election. A lot of people tend not to vote during local elections, but more people turn out with a general election. So in 2020, this year, we had general election. I was working in Laramie Secondary High School, and we had about, I think, a little under 400 people for our polling station, and I got the position as a poll clerk. Now there are two types of poll clerks, the red line and the green line. I was the red line, and that position is where people who come without their ID card and they want to vote, or any other problems, I usually would have to deal with them. Well, the red line poll clerk would usually have to deal with them. I would say all in all, it was a very long day. You can't really get away from that. It seems like it just dragged a lot. I think by the time it was 9 o'clock, I felt like it should have been lunchtime, honestly. But there would always be like a period where a lot of people would come in, like an influx. So that's usually around lunchtime, or in the morning at the start of the poll, around lunchtime, and then coming down to the evening. Some people have different experiences, but in our polling station we had like lulls where it didn't really have anybody, and then it had points where it was like pace. I would say that I was able to get a group of people that worked very well together. There were no clashing personalities. Everybody knew what they had to do, and perform their duties pretty well, I would say. And as the red line, I would have to document all the people who would have done either oaths or affirmations, any of these special cases in terms of people not being found to vote in that polling station, and any other things. I would have to write it down and then give the notes to the PO to write it in the polling station diary, because everything has to be documented. That and all was very seamless and going smoothly. The only thing I would say is that we were the polling station that actually had to count the special ballots. Now the special ballots are where people who voted as special electors would have voted prior to election day, and that includes poll day staff, because of course we can't vote on the same day we work in, right? And there are other classes of people who fall under that, like police officers, and I want to say nurses and doctors, but I'm not completely sure. But it's a whole list of them that fall under special voting. So we had to count those ballots. So we actually had an extra amount of work at the end of the night, and our night ended up finishing like 9 o'clock in the night. So I was there from since 4:30 to 9 in the night. But all in all, it's worth it. You get a good bit of change depending on which position you get, but it's still way more than if you work in a regular job. I mean, unless you're like a manager somewhere, the amount of money you get for the day is well more than the average person would make for a day at their day job. So I think that's great. The only thing you have to consider is that you really have to run away during the day when there's like nobody in the polling station to like go and use the washroom, or if you want to take something to eat, is really, you have to like steal time to do that, because you kind of need to be on the premises almost like the whole time. We didn't have any problematic people coming to the polling station either, really, so that was also good. And the polling agents that we got to work with, I think, were very amicable, not problematic at all. Even after the poll was closed and the counting of the ballots and stuff, everything worked smoothly, so to speak. We had a little recheck-in to do, but no big deal. Everything balanced out at the end of the night. And if it wasn't for the losing party contesting the votes in certain constituencies, we would have already gotten paid. But it has been a week since the election, and we have yet to get paid, because they can't pay us until everything is sorted out and finalized, and there are no more recounting and rehashing of anything happening. And what they usually do is they will pay you in a check that is cut from the treasury, so you could only cash the check. If you want to cash the check, you could only go to the treasury to cash it. Otherwise, they just deposit it in your bank, and it take about like 2 to 3 days, 3 to 5 working, basically, depending on which bank it is. May take longer, sometimes take shorter. If you ever consider working for election, just know it's a long day, so make sure you get like enough sleep the night before. And if you can possibly get time off, maybe the day after, if you have to go to work, then make sure you're well rested the day before, so that you're not burnt out on that day, so that as soon as that day is finished, you just go and you sleep until the next day, so that you go to work not feeling like exhausted. And during the day, you don't want to be like eating and drinking a lot of stuff that will ultimately send you to the washroom, because you also want to keep that as limited as possible, because you can't really be running in and out of the polling station, especially if you're not like a poll clerk like me, because it's 2 of us, so if one of us not there, we could always just fill in for the other. So if you're like somebody like the ballot box or the DPO, that's a little bit more tricky to work around, right? Because in terms of the DPO, the PO could always step in for the DPO, but in terms of the ballot box, I don't know what is the person who could step in for her. I've not really seen that in action, so just bear that in mind. And even if you don't get through, I think I mentioned this in my previous video of how to apply to work for elections, but even if you don't get through to work on election day, they do compensate you for the days that you would have done all the training, and so you still get a little something for your time. And I would say they usually don't, well, I've had the experience where I only worked once before. I worked last year for local election. They usually don't put you in a position of a high ranking if it's like your first or second time. Well, so far that has been happening to me. So I've been the green line poll clerk last year, and now I'm the red line. So if I work for elections the next 4 or 5 years, I may get officer of the ballot box, or maybe I might get a DPO, but I think it's like an incremental step up, because they don't really want to have too many inexperienced people in the polling station, just so that people could kind of help each other out and pick up the slack where some people might be lacking. The only person who was new was actually Green Line, so when the day started off, I helped her out and walk her through the first couple of electors that came in, so that she would kind of get a feel of what to do. And once she got that down, it's like it come like clockwork. The only thing was different was dealing with the heavy sanitization protocols we had to incorporate. We were like spraying down everything like crazy. We were spraying on the pen, spraying on the desk, spraying on the hand, like all the time. My hands were like so sticky, because after a while, every time you're using hand sanitizer, it just started to get sticky, and you started to go and actually wash your hands with soap and water. because that's actually the better way to sanitize. But of course, you can't be running in and out of the polling station, so you're kind of limited there. There's a lot of, like with anything in our country, there's a lot of controversy and a lot of people helping out their friends, right? Let's call it like that. Corruption. But I know that a lot of people get these jobs as favors and they're not really fit to fill the role properly, and that ends up in having a lot of mishaps during the day. But I thank the Lord that didn't happen at my polling station. Everything was good. People were experienced. People know what they was doing, and we didn't have any complaints. We didn't have to go and recount anything. Everything was, accounted for because everybody did their job, right? If you're ever thinking of working for elections, just keep that in mind. Make sure you study the manual. And that's another thing, they let you have the manual on the day so you could always reference it in terms of there's something that happened that you didn't quite remember from the exam and from the training. You could always go back in the book and look up what it is you're supposed to do. So in terms of that, you just make sure that you know what you're supposed to do and be aware of what other people are supposed to be doing, because once one person slip up, it's kind of like everything is connected in the polling station, so it's going to affect everybody. So that would be my best advice. And I guess pray about it, because you really don't want to be working with other people who don't know what they're doing, because it's gonna be dramas in the end. If you found this video helpful and you would like to see more about things that you can do to make money in Trinidad and Tobago, consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.